August 23, 1961, 4:30 p.m. NYPD officers arrived at a Queens construction site responding to an anonymous call about bodies. What they found would haunt them for the rest of their careers. 6 men, standing upright in holes, cemented in from the waist down, each with a single bullet wound to the head. The bodies hadn't fallen. They stood there, deceased, held vertical by the concrete that had trapped them. Blood dried on their faces, eyes still open, mouths frozen in final expressions of terror. The crime scene photographer vomited twice before finishing his documentation. Detective Frank Morrison, 20-year NYPD veteran, later told colleagues it was the most disturbing thing he'd ever witnessed. They were standing in their own graves. Whoever did this wanted them to know they were dying, wanted them to stand there waiting for it. Within 2 hours, all 6 victims were identified as Genovese family soldiers from Brooklyn. FBI was immediately involved. This wasn't just murder. This was organized crime warfare on a scale that demanded federal attention. But what nobody at that crime scene understood, what the investigation would never prove, was that 48 hours earlier, these 6 men had made the worst mistake of their criminal careers. They'd stolen $250,000 from Bumpy Johnson. And what happened in those 48 hours didn't just kill 6 professional criminals. It created a legend so terrifying that for the remaining 7 years of Bumpy's life, nobody would dare steal from him again. August 22, 1961, 4:17 a.m. Bumpy Johnson received a phone call from Illinois Gordon with news that made his blood run cold, despite decades of experience with betrayal and violence. "Boss, they hit the Lenox Avenue count house. $250,000 gone. Clean job, professional." It was the Genovese crew. "I've got confirmation from 3 sources. Vito sent 6 soldiers from his Brooklyn operation. They're already back across the bridge celebrating like they got away with it." The count house on Lenox Avenue was one of Bumpy's most secure locations, where cash from numbers operations, loan collections, and various enterprises was counted, recorded, and prepared for distribution. Steel doors, armed guards, alarm systems. Should have been impenetrable. But someone had provided inside information about guard schedules and security protocols. The 6 Genovese soldiers had entered at 2:47 a.m., neutralized 2 guards without firing shots, disabled alarms, opened the safe using combinations only Bumpy's inner circle knew, and escaped with $250,000 in cash. This wasn't just theft. This was a declaration of war disguised as robbery. Vito Genovese, head of one of New York's 5 major Italian crime families, had been testing boundaries with Bumpy for months. Territorial disputes, disagreements about profit sharing from joint ventures, tensions over Genovese's efforts to expand into Harlem neighborhoods Bumpy controlled. But stealing directly from Bumpy's operation crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. This was a message. Genovese didn't respect Bumpy's power, didn't fear retaliation, believed Italian organizations could take what they wanted from black operators without consequences. Bumpy's response needed to be overwhelming, immediate, and so brutal that every crime family in New York would understand that stealing from him meant total annihilation. What Vito Genovese didn't understand, what his assumptions about racial hierarchy in organized crime made him blind to, was that Bumpy Johnson had an intelligence network more sophisticated than any Italian family in New York, and the capacity for violence so creative and psychologically devastating that it would redefine what retaliation meant. By 6 a.m. on August 22nd, Bumpy had preliminary information. The robbery had been professional, experienced criminals, not random thieves. Safe opened using combinations, not blown or forced, inside information. Guards neutralized without gunfire, disciplined operators avoiding attention. By 10 a.m., Bumpy had specifics. 3 separate sources confirmed. Genovese soldiers from Brooklyn celebrating a successful Harlem job. The sources provided names. Anthony Little Tony Russo, 32, stocky with dark hair. Vincent DeLuca, 28, tall and thin. Michael Carbone, 35, muscular build. Thomas Ferraro, 31, average height. James Costello, 29, lean with distinctive scar on left cheek. Robert Amato, 33, heavyset. All 6 confirmed Genovese soldiers working out of a Brooklyn social club. By 2 p.m., Bumpy had their locations, routines, vulnerabilities. By 8 p.m., he'd assembled a team of 12 men for coordinated capture. The plan: grab all 6 targets simultaneously so none could warn others or escape. 6 different locations hit at the same time: apartments, social clubs, girlfriends' homes. August 22nd, 11:47 p.m. The operation executed flawlessly. At precisely 11:47 p.m., teams hit all 6 locations simultaneously. Anthony Russo grabbed leaving his girlfriend's apartment in Brooklyn. Vincent DeLuca taken from a bar. Michael Carbone captured at home. Thomas Ferraro abducted from his car at a traffic light. James Costello seized leaving the Genovese social club. Robert Amato taken from a restaurant. All 6 captures within a 3-minute window. Coordination so precise none had warning. One moment going about normal activities, next unconscious from chloroform being transported to Queens. The 6 soldiers regained consciousness around 1:30 a.m. on August 23rd in a construction site. Large plot where building foundation was being prepared. Deserted at night, surrounded by fencing preventing observation. 6 deep holes had been excavated, approximately 6 feet deep, just wide enough for a person to stand in. Each soldier was forced into a hole, positioned standing upright, hands bound behind them. Then the holes were partially filled with dirt and concrete mix poured around their legs, cementing them in standing position. They couldn't sit, couldn't move, couldn't escape. Trapped, standing in holes that would become their graves. Bumpy Johnson arrived at the construction site around 2:10 a.m. The 6 soldiers, cemented into standing graves with only upper bodies above ground, saw him approach. Some tried maintaining defiance. Others immediately began begging. Bumpy spoke calmly, addressing all 6 simultaneously. "Gentlemen, you stole $250,000 from my operation last night. You thought you could rob me without consequences. You thought Vito Genovese's name would protect you. You were wrong about many things. Let me educate you before you spend your final hours contemplating your mistakes." Bumpy walked slowly past each standing figure, making eye contact. "You're standing in your own graves. The concrete around your legs is setting. You can't move. You can't escape. You're going to stand here for the next 12 hours thinking about what you did and what's going to happen. Then at 2 p.m. tomorrow, you'll each be shot once in the head. Your bodies will remain here, standing in these graves, as a message to everyone who thinks they can steal from Bumpy Johnson. Anthony Russo, stockiest of the six with dark hair matted with sweat, tried maintaining mob tough guy persona. "Genovese is going to destroy you for this, Johnson. You're a dead man. You can't touch made men without the commission coming down on you." Bumpy's response was cold. "The commission will understand this as legitimate retaliation for theft. Vito authorized you to steal from me. He'll face consequences separately. But you six? You're already gone. You just don't know it yet. The next 12 hours are for you to understand why you're dying." Vincent DeLuca, tall and thin with terror visible, took different approach. "Please, we were just following orders. Vito told us to hit your count house. We're soldiers. We do what we're told. We'll give the money back, all of it. Just let us go." Bumpy shook his head. "The money's already gone. Even if you had it, returning stolen money doesn't undo the theft. You chose to participate in robbing me. You celebrated afterward like you'd accomplished something clever. Now, you face consequences." Michael Carbone, muscular and usually confident, tried negotiation. "Name your price. We've got connections. We can get you money. More than what was stolen. Double it, triple it. Whatever you want. Just don't do this." Bumpy's expression didn't change. "I don't want your money. I want every criminal in New York to understand what happens when you steal from me. You six are the message. You're going to stand in these graves for 12 hours. You're going to think about your choices. You're going to understand that you're dying because you underestimated me. And when people find your bodies tomorrow afternoon, standing in your own graves, they'll understand what I'm capable of." The psychological torture of the next 12 hours was the point. The six soldiers stood in concrete-encased holes, unable to sit or move, as night turned to dawn and dawn turned to afternoon. They couldn't sleep standing up. Their legs went numb from concrete compression and lack of circulation, exposed to weather, hot August day leaving them sunburned and dehydrated. Minimal water but no food. Most devastatingly, 12 hours to think about impending execution. 12 hours of terror knowing they'd be shot at 2 p.m. 12 hours watching the sun move across the sky, marking passage of time toward their end. Some soldiers broke psychologically during those hours. Thomas Ferraro began crying uncontrollably around dawn. James Costello started bargaining with God, praying loudly. Robert Amato began confessing to various crimes, as if confession would save him. Others tried maintaining dignity. Anthony Russo remained defiant until around noon, when exhaustion and fear finally broke him. Vincent DeLuca and Michael Carbone mostly stayed silent, perhaps accepting the inevitable. Throughout 12 hours, Bumpy's men maintained watch, preventing escape. Impossible, but the soldiers didn't know that. Preventing interference from anyone who might stumble upon the scene. Documenting the soldiers' psychological deterioration. At 2 p.m. on August 23rd, exactly 12 hours after being cemented into standing graves, the 6 Genovese soldiers were executed. Illinois Gordon and 5 crew members approached the 6 holes. Each executioner stood before one cemented soldier and fired a single shot to the head at precisely 2 p.m. 6 executions, simultaneous. The bodies remained standing in holes, held upright by concrete that had trapped them. Blood flowed down, but bodies didn't fall. They stood there, deceased, in their own graves, a tableau of death deliberately left visible. At 4:30 p.m., Anonymous call to NYPD reported bodies at Queens construction site. Police arrived to find 6 men standing in holes, clearly deceased, visible signs of execution. Crime scene unlike anything most officers had seen. Bizarre positioning, concrete imprisonment, simultaneous execution timing. Investigation quickly identified victims as Genovese family soldiers. FBI immediately involved. Organized crime violence on scale demanding federal attention. Detectives and agents interviewed witnesses, searched for evidence, interrogated known associates of both Bumpy Johnson and Vito Genovese. Found nothing that could be used for prosecution. Every member of Bumpy's organization had alibis. No witnesses who'd seen captures or executions. Construction site forensics revealed nothing beyond the obvious. 6 men cemented into holes and shot. But who did it? Where they were captured? How they were transported? All remained mysteries. Investigation concluded this was clearly retaliation, but without cooperation from organized crime sources, prosecution was impossible. Vito Genovese's reaction to losing 6 soldiers was complex, furious at executions and humiliation of having his men so thoroughly defeated. But he also understood the robbery had been his mistake. He'd authorized theft from Bumpy without fully appreciating consequences. The commission, ruling body of New York's crime families, was convened. Bumpy was questioned about the executions. His response straightforward. 6 men stole $250,000 from my operation. I recovered none of the money. I retaliated against the thieves. This is standard procedure for dealing with theft. If the commission believes my response was inappropriate, let's discuss what the appropriate response should have been. The commission, after deliberation, ruled Bumpy's retaliation was excessive, but understandable given the provocation. They determined Vito Genovese had erred in authorizing the theft and bore responsibility for his soldiers' fate. No sanctions imposed on Bumpy. Genovese informally censured and told to avoid further provocations. The standing burial execution method became legendary in organized crime circles. Story spread through every family, every crew, every criminal network in New York and beyond. Details varied in telling, but core facts remained consistent. 6 Genovese soldiers stole from Bumpy Johnson, were caught within hours, were cemented into standing graves for 12 hours of psychological torture, then executed simultaneously. The image of 6 men standing in their own graves, waiting helplessly for termination, was so viscerally disturbing that it achieved Bumpy's goal, creating a deterrent so powerful that nobody would consider stealing from him again. For the remaining 7 years of Bumpy's life until his passing in 1968, no organized crime family attempted to rob his operations. The standing burial incident had established that consequences of such theft were too severe to risk. Other crime families considering moves into Bumpy's territories reconsidered. Message was clear. Bumpy Johnson would respond to violations with overwhelming, creative, psychologically devastating violence that went beyond standard mob retaliation. Illinois Gordon, discussing the incident years later, explained the strategic thinking. Boss didn't just want the thieves eliminated. He wanted to create a story so disturbing that it would be told and retold throughout organized crime. The standing burial did that. People who heard about it felt sick, imagining 12 hours cemented upright waiting to be shot. That visceral reaction was the deterrent. Nobody wanted to risk ending up in a standing grave. The method was deliberately chosen to be memorable and frightening. When Bumpy Johnson passed away in 1968, the standing burial incident was mentioned in conversations about his most effective displays of power. People recalled how 6 Genovese soldiers had stolen from him and ended up cemented in standing graves, shot simultaneously after 12 hours of terror. The story had achieved mythic status, details exaggerated in some tellings, but core message remained. Stealing from Bumpy meant facing punishment so severe and creative that it discouraged all future theft attempts. The incident also affected how Italian crime families viewed black operators generally. Before the standing burial, some Italian mobsters assumed black criminals were less capable or less willing to inflict extreme violence in response to provocations. After the standing burial, that assumption was challenged. Bumpy had demonstrated organizational sophistication in capturing 6 targets simultaneously, creative cruelty in torture method, and absolute commitment to retaliation regardless of potential commission consequences. If you made it to the end, hit that like button if this story showed you that in organized crime, reputation, and deterrence sometimes require displays of power so overwhelming that they become legendary. Drop a comment. Was Bumpy's response to the theft justified or excessive? Is there a line in criminal justice beyond which retaliation becomes counterproductive? Subscribe because these stories illuminate complex power dynamics within organized crime and how reputation was established through strategic violence. Remember what happened in those 48 hours. August 22nd, 4:17 a.m., Illinois. Gordon reported $250,000 stolen from Lenox Avenue Count House by 6 Genovese soldiers. 10:00 a.m., all 6 thieves identified through intelligence network. 11:47 p.m., all 6 captured simultaneously in coordinated operation. August 23rd, 1:30 a.m., 6 soldiers cemented into standing graves. 12-hour psychological torture began. 2:00 p.m., all 6 executed simultaneously with single shots. 4:30 p.m., bodies discovered by police, standing upright in graves. Investigation found nothing prosecutable. Commission ruled Bumpy's retaliation understandable. Genovese censured. Story became legendary. Deterrence established permanently. For 7 years, nobody stole from Bumpy. 6 men standing in graves became the image that protected millions in assets. That's not just retaliation. That's strategic use of spectacular violence to establish boundaries so clear nobody dares cross them.